Welcome to Real Leaders with Roshini, the podcast with real talk, real questions, real insight, and we hope real inspiration. For real. We're at Capitol Grill in downtown Minneapolis. My guest today is Keith Ellison. He is Minnesota's Attorney General, longtime politician, and a lot of other interesting factoids you're going to learn about today. Thanks so much for being with me, Keith.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me in.
I have to start with Detroit. You grew up in Detroit.
I did.
How do you think Detroit shaped you?
It gave me very strong working class sensibilities. I see myself as a person who is the neighbor, the friend, the son, relative of auto workers. My father was an auto worker, but he also went on to Wayne State and became a psychiatrist, a physician. But my mother raised us, and she was a social worker, worked on the problems of people who really had problems. And I remember the deindustrialization of Detroit. I worked for a city council member named Mel Ravitz, who assigned me to go to every plant closing, and I ended up being really busy, and going to plant closings quite a lot and talking with workers about what we could do about it, what should be done about it. Detroit is also a very southern town. I know that might surprise people. What do you mean? Detroit's in the north. Yeah, but the population of Detroit is made up of people from Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, black and white. There's a place called Taylor, Michigan, which is a predominantly white suburb. We used to call it Taylor-tucky because everybody from there was from Kentucky. And so, my mother's from Louisiana. My father's family is from Georgia. So it has a lot of that connectivity there. But it's a great city. I mean, I do kind of favor my adopted city of Minneapolis. But, it's a city of tremendous history. The first time Martin Luther King did one of his great civil rights marches and even sort of began to hint at the "I Have a Dream" speech was when he walked down Woodward Avenue with C.L. Franklin, who is the great Aretha Franklin's father and who was a renowned pastor in Detroit, and Walter Reuther, who was the head of the United Auto Workers at the time. So that's the Detroit. That's my Detroit, right? My parents are still there. My two older brothers are still there, and the younger three of us had to hit the wind. So I came to Minnesota. My other younger brother went to Boston, and my other younger brother went to North Carolina. But the older two are still there, and my parents are still there.
So I have to share a little bit about a little slice of Detroit that I had in my life. So my previous life was as a TV news reporter, and my last television market as a reporter was Detroit, Michigan.
So you know the D.
I know the D. I know the different avenues. I lived between 10 and 11 Mile and Royal Oak.
You know where that is.
And, one of the things that struck me the most about Detroit is, and I've traveled all over the country, different parts of the world, in nice restaurants. It was the only city that I've been to where you're in any nice restaurant and 50% of the people there are people of color and 50% are white. I don't see that in San Fran. I don't see that in Boston. No. I don't see that in LA. So to me, Detroit gets a bad rap for racial issues, but when I go into a nice restaurant, half of the people have brown skin like I do. And I can't say that in my hometown of Minneapolis. I can't say that in my second home of Boston. And I can't even say that in Paris, France. I mean, and I think that is a strength that does not get brought out about Detroit.
Detroit has a black middle class. It has a brown middle class. It has people of color who are doing important things, not only in government, in medicine, in law, in business. It's not, it's happened. It's one of those things that we kind of hoped for, I think, back in the 60s when there really was very little opportunity for anybody who was not Caucasian. Now, in places like Detroit, maybe Atlanta, maybe New Orleans, there might be a few others, but Detroit really is a place where that ladder of opportunity has been extended to people who generations ago, just didn't have it, and it was unthinkable for them.
So you've seen all that. It eventually led you to law school, led you to becoming a civil rights attorney and criminal defense attorney.
Yeah.
How did that then shape your decision to get into politics?
So I was probably 33 or 4 by the time I began to think that maybe electoral politics had answers. I have to credit a great guy named Paul Wellstone. I remember talking to him, and he was telling me that, look, we've been out of, people who fight for justice, civil rights, human rights have been out of power so long that we don't conceive of ourselves as being in power or what we would do if we actually had some, and we've got to get used to power. And that's one lesson he actually told me. He told me that, you can shape your identity around being a protester, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what if your protest succeeds, and now you're the city council member?
Now what?
Right. What do we do now? And what you find out is that it's harder than we thought it was, and yet it can be done. So I was 39 before I held any office, and I'm 56 now, so it is fair for you to say I'm a longtime politician, but I was 39 before I held any office, and I would say that while I definitely embrace our young politicians and support them 100%, including my son Jeremiah Ellison, who's a city council member, 29 years old, I'm not regretful that I didn't start earlier. I think it was good that I kind of...
You had some life experience.
Right.
You had some discernment.
Right. I sat in jails with people facing serious time for things they were accused of. I sat with people who were victims of discrimination. I sat with people who had, lost their job or been denied access to a hotel room because of who they were. And I've, fought to try to get the city or the state to convert over to more green things that for our city and reduce pollution that was impacting North Minneapolis, where I live.
Well, at the end of the day, I want to talk about that experience and how it shapes who should run for Congress. Because then after 4 years in the Minnesota House, you ran for Congress from Minnesota's 5th District. You served there for 12 years. There's something about that experience that then gives you some credibility. Whether people agree with you or not, you have that experience. Because I'm a little challenged right now with some people who've run for Congress who have won office, and they're making their agendas kind of the forefront. They're not remembering all of them, and I won't name names. And this is both parties.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not remembering. They're not only representing their home state, they're representing the people of the whole nation. And their agendas are getting, I think, the best of them.
Well, I tell you, one thing about the U.S. Congress is that you may be from a certain place, but when you vote, you're affecting every place. When I cast a vote from the 5th Congressional District of Minnesota, I'm affecting San Diego, California.
Do you think the new crop of members of Congress realize that fully?
It's a hard thing to internalize, but I got to say that I don't know, but I just hope so. But the thing is that you got to get around. You got to talk to people. You got to listen. You've got to take off the ties and take off the suits, and you've got to put on the whatever people are wearing, and you got to listen up. You got to go to the coffee shop. You got to go to the church basement. That's what it is. That's the job. And if you're not willing to do that, then what you're doing is you're going to allow all these untested ideas just to float around in your head, and you're going to impose them on people. And I think good public policy is rooted in experience. It's rooted in what people are going through at the moment. Good public policy is not it doesn't fall out of the sky. It comes up out of the ground.
And let's talk about grace and humility for a moment. So do you think there are enough members of our current Congress who, if they get something wrong, if they mess up...
We all do.
We all do. And they're able to say, you know what, I'm sorry, instead of now the campaign about the cover-up or the defensiveness or whatever it is.
Well, I think that admitting a mistake and admitting fault is something that is in short supply. Not because people have bad character, but because the consequences of mistake are so high. We live in a smear-based political culture. What I mean by that is that people are paid fairly large sums of money to simply dig dirt on you and to try to make that the whole campaign. These folks who campaign that way have discovered a very, very obvious truth, which is that there's too much complexity in the votes and the public policy and the bills and the statutes for really anybody to keep up with. So what they really want to go to people and say is, can you trust this person? And their answer is, no, you cannot trust this person because they're not like us. This smear-based culture that I'm talking about is why people put money into Oppo research. It's what we do. And so because of that, if you made a mistake, redemption's hard to come by. And so people end up not really admitting it very often, and it's too bad, because we need people to make mistakes. We need people to be able to change their minds. But if a politician changes their mind, what do we call them? Flip-flopper.
Exactly. And that dogs you for the rest of your career.
And it dogs you. And so, like, I just decided back when I was 39 years old running that I really wasn't going to make decisions based on the outcome of an election. I was just going to do what I thought was right. And if maybe I win, maybe I won't. But, being an elected official didn't make me somebody, and not being one won't do the reverse, right? I mean, I got my kids love me. I got people in my family who care, and in my community. So that's good enough for me. And
let's talk about those kids. You have 4 adult children.
I do.
That's got to be quite, another part of your life that takes on its own layers of dimension.
Well, I'm way too young to be the parent of these old people. I mean, where they come from?
You started young.
Yes, this is my reason. And I give Kim Ellison a lot of credit. She and I were married many years. We're good friends, and she's a great mom.
And it's wonderful that you can say that about your former wife.
She's a great person. It's no doubt.
What is a lesson that any of them teach you now, your children?
Ooh, my kids teach me on the daily, every day. First of all, my daughter's like, Dad, you need to listen to Lizzo. I'm like, Liz who? Lizzo. So I'm like, that's good music, So my daughter teaches me music. My son Jeremiah, he teaches me about art. He taught me that an artist isn't someone who makes pretty pictures or writes pretty songs. An artist is somebody who utilizes creativity to solve a problem. And that problem might be a problem of the canvas and color and light, or it might be a problem of sound, or a problem of expressing some sort of social anxiety or social hope. But artists are essentially creative problem solvers. My oldest son, he lived in China. He spent a lot of time in Egypt, and he went down to New Orleans to go to law school. He teaches me a lot about things he's seen. And because I've never been to China yet, knock on wood, looking forward to going. And my son Elijah, when he was a student at South High, he looked me in the eye one day, about a month away from his high school graduation, and said to me, I ain't going to college. I'm like, what do you mean? Don't you know how much our family has sacrificed, how your grandfather didn't even get to go to school, blah, blah, blah. I laid a lot of guilt trips on him, right? And he said, look, I'm not ready to do that. I'll probably go, but I'm not going now. And he enlisted in the United States Army, became a combat medic, did that job for 5 years. Now he is a nursing student at Mankato State, and we're incredibly proud of him. But he taught me something about gumption.
And knowing yourself.
And, I always thought to myself, I raised my kids to be independent thinkers, but I didn't mean, think independently of me, right? I meant, right? I meant just like do what I say, but otherwise think for yourself. And they kind of took it more globally.
Right, which is probably good in the long run.
In the long run, it is. I mean, my son Jeremiah, a brilliant young man, my council member, he did go to college. He went to Hamlin, but then midway through, he said he was going to go pursue a career in art, and was a muralist, and still is an artist, and then ran for city council when he became outraged about certain things that were going on, and didn't ask me if he should run. I found out he was running.
Did you find out on social media?
I don't know exactly that. Yeah, I think I did. I said, what's this? I hear you're running for city council. He said, yeah, I'm running for city council. I'm like, congratulations.
Thanks for the heads up, bro.
Right. But he said to me, look, Dad, people have seen you, they voted for you. If I just go try to, I don't want people, they're already going to say that this is some sort of legacy entitlement. So why let it be true? Right. I got to do this on my own.
How smart that he had some foresight there.
Well, he wanted to do it himself, man. He did. Mm-hmm. Actually, he did. He did something I have never done, which is took on an incumbent and won. And I've always run for open seats.
Well, speaking of that, some say you could have stayed in the U.S. Congress forever or gone on to higher office. You did serve nationally for the Democratic Party.
12 years.
Yeah. Why come back and say, I want to run for statewide office and stay in Minnesota, not be in, and I know in your position you do things on the national front, but you could have had that cush job for a long time.
Yeah. Well, so, when the whatever they write on my gravestone, whenever that happens, I do not want it to be held a cush job for a long time. Those are not the words I'm looking for, right? I mean, I am trying to, pursue justice, fairness in our world, environmental stewardship. That's what I'm trying to get done. And at this moment in American history, 2019, the real action is at the state level. That's where it's going down. I mean, it's not as glam. It's not as high profile. You flick on CNN, you don't see too many state AGs up there. But who is fighting to protect the Affordable Care Act? State AGs. Who's fighting the child separation policy and caging kids? State AGs. Who's protecting the endangered species? State AGs. Who's fighting to stop people from getting ripped off and scammed? Who's fighting for people's wages every day? State AGs. Who's at the vanguard of so many things? State AGs. Who's protecting the right to choose? State AGs. I mean, it's not that people in Congress don't want to do it. They would like to. But
they're having a lot of challenges.
Well, it's just a gummed up, jammed up institution.
Well, Keith Ellison, your plate is full. This is exhausting. What do you do to unwind?
Well, I'm an amateur guitar player. I'm not very good, but I like.
We should have had you bring the guitar in.
I would have done it. I mean, I'm not good, but I'm not shy. So I'll play, right? What else do I do? I love to try to stay in shape. I'm not really winning that battle these days. I got to get up earlier or something. I have a wonderful wife. Her name is Monica Hurtado. Wonderful person. She and I hang out. What's
a date night for you and Monica?
So we have date night. Just to be clear, she's too busy and I'm too busy to simply let it happen if it happens, right? So we said Friday night, 6:00, be home, ready to do something. Phones off. No more, you can't be there but not really there. Physically there but mentally and psychologically and emotionally elsewhere. You got to be present. And that's a battle for me, but I'm doing all right on that score. Sometimes we go to plays, sometimes we go to movies, sometimes we walk, sometimes we just sit at home and cook together, something good. She believes in good food, like good food.
Smart woman.
Processed preservatives, all that. No, we ain't doing that. And so it takes a while to cook good food, right? So we'll do that together. And then Sunday night, as a family night, we invite the kids over to have dinner and do that on a very regular basis. Actually, we do it unless we decide not to. It's kind of a default presumption. We're going to have dinner at Dad's on Sunday night.
Well, it's great to hear that with everything you have on your plate, you're still able to harness that foundation of the family.
Sure. Well, you know what? It's the foundation. Now, you know what I mean. I mean, these people keep us going. These kids. Well, I mean, all of them, right? I mean, honestly, this summer, Moni, the kids, my sister-in-law, all of them, they all came out from diverse places to rent Airbnb in St. Paul, hung out for a few days. I mean, my parents, I stay in touch with them. And so all these folks we're all cheering each other on. If you ever see, the birds flying south for the winter, they're always in that V, right? And you hear them honking at each other, right? Well, they're literally encouraging the lead bird, who's taking on most of the wind, to keep going, keep going, keep going. And when they fly together and they honk at each other, it allows the lead bird at the point of that V to go a little longer. And then after a while, they get too tired, they just fall off, and then they get into the draft of another bird. But hey, that's how our families are. They keep us going, they keep us moving, they keep us up. We get up because of them. We don't stop because of them.
Well, Keith Ellison, I wish you luck as long as you are the lead bird for the state as the Attorney General.
All right.
With all the things that you are doing for the people of Minnesota and the country.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, great. Talk to you soon.
Until next time, keep it real.